So if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, then you might already be aware that I recently broke my foot, which basically means that I'm currently living a real life take care of her sort of situation, because my husband has been absolutely amazing, just like waiting on me hand at foot, because I'm somewhat like useless at the moment. So I thought that I would take some inspiration from my current situation and finally make a follow-up video to my take care of her sick moment trope romance recommendation video that I made a couple of months ago. If you missed it and you want to check it out, I'll make sure to have a link for it in the description below. But today I basically have a completely new stack of books to share with you that all have this trope somewhere in it. I do want to keep this video spoiler free though, so for some of these books I won't be able to tell you like how the trope actually fits into the book, but just know that in all the books in today's video, this trope will be found some point throughout the story. So with that said, I did want to start with 3 Mariana Zapata books, because in my last video I did share a bunch, but since then I've read a couple more and I found some more that have this trope in it. I think that she's just like a really big fan of this trope, and I'm not complaining because I love this trope. But either way, first up, I wanted to share The Wall of Winnipeg, which is, I mean, just so you know, like all Mariana Zapata books, if you're not familiar, are very slow burn romances. So you have to know that going into it, because you have to be like willing to like wait it out, because they're all freaking massive, like 600-700 page books, and the couple won't get together until like the last like 10% of it. But if you're willing to like, you know, wait it out, then it will be completely worth it. But either way, this is a marriage of convenience between a professional football player and his ex-personal assistant, and it is absolutely amazing. Highly recommend checking it out. One of my favorite Mariana Zapata books. But also, I wanted to share with you Wait for It, which is a single parent sort of situation. So this girl is the guardians to her 2 nephews ever since her brother passed away and left them to her. And she's now like moving into a brand new home, and she's going to get there and she's going to meet her new next door neighbor, and it's going to be their slow burn romance. So absolutely love this one. And then lastly, for Mariana Zapata, I also have Luna and the Lie, which is a boss employee sort of situation. This girl is a mechanic. She like paints cars of sorts in this mechanic shop. And one day, like years ago, she told a lie for her boss, and he feels like he has to like repay her. So he's always asking her like, oh, when can I like, you know, cash in that favor that I owe you for you telling me the lie? And at the beginning of this book, obviously she's finally going to be ready to cash it in, and then it's going to be their sort of romance. So all of Mariana Zapata books, just so you know, at least almost all of them are very big age gaps. So they're all age gaps, grumpy sunshine, slow burn romances. And if you're into that sort of stuff, then I highly recommend checking these out, because all 3 of them do have a take care of her sort of situation, and happens to be, I think Luna and the Lie is more of a take care of him situation, but either way, it's still the same vibe. So check these 3 out. But anyway, after Mariana Zapata, I also wanted to share with you Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. So I have been mentioning this in a couple of my videos recently, but I don't really care. I'm going to mention it again because this book fits so perfectly into this trope. So in this story, you're following this girl who is a loner, and she's been very heavily bullied in her previous school. So her parents finally like pull her out of that school and put her into a private school. And that is when she's going to meet the popular guy of the school, who also happens to be like the rugby prodigy of sorts, and it's going to be their romance. And at the beginning of this book, he's going to find out why she transferred schools, and he's going to become very protective of her and very obsessed with her. It's kind of like a guy falls first, guy falls harder situation, and it's basically going to be absolutely amazing. It is a high school setting, but if you're cool with that, then it is a really, really great book. And you do have to look up some trigger warnings for it. There's like stuff like bullying and abuse and like suicidal thoughts, things along those lines. It's a very heavy book, but if you're down for that sort of thing, then it's really good. I also should mention that it is a very thick book, and it is also a duet. So you have to read the second book in the story to finally get your happily ever after. But if you're willing to commit, then it is definitely like worth your time, because if you're a fan of this trope, then this book, like the entire thing is just like him taking care of her, like left and right. He's always like around the corner, just like ready to swoop in and like save the day. And it was just absolutely amazing. This guy, his name is Johnny, and he is one of the best book boyfriends I have come across in a very long time. So please check out this duet if you are willing to commit to it, because it will be very worth it. But anyway, let's move on. So next up, I also have Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke. So this is a standalone, very small, quick, easy read, and you're following this girl who is a track star in college, and she just recently like transferred schools, and she's going to end up having a forbidden romance with one of her coaches, because the whole thing about this book is that she basically like runs in her sleep. So therefore she'll get to practice in the morning, and she'll already be like winded and can't really perform to her like, you know, ability of sorts. And the coach basically like picks up on the fact that like something's wrong. So he's going to step in, force her to admit like what's going on, and then he's going to basically take care of her. So this is another one of those books where it's like the whole book is kind of like him taking care of her. Like there are so many moments like left and right where he just like swoops in, makes sure to like save the day sort of vibe. And it is also a forbidden, coach to student thing. So if you're down for that sort of vibe, then I highly recommend checking this one out. It was one of my favorite books from 2022 so far. But anyway, after that one, I will recommend another Elizabeth O'Rourke book, which is A Deal with the Devil. And this is a professional plastic surgeon. Like he's a very well-known plastic surgeon for like the rich and famous sort of vibe. And it's going to end up being a romance between him and his new personal assistant. And the thing is that this guy like sleeps around very often, and he's very well known for that. He's kind of like, a player, and like he's always in the tabloids for that sort of stuff. And this girl's not a big fan of him, but she wants to be his personal assistant anyway because he's paying really well and she needs the money, and it's basically going to end up being their romance. So this is one of those books where it's like there's a moment where he like goes and takes care of her, and I don't really want to give it away, so I'm just going to say that you should read the book to find out what I'm talking about. But it is a very, very cute moment, and I still like remember it very vividly when I read this book. So yeah, check out A Deal with the Devil to find the take care of her sick moment situation. But anyway, after this one, I also wanted to share Don't Kiss the Bride by Carrie Ann Cole. So this is a marriage of convenience with an age gap. This girl is a senior in high school. I think she's like 18 or 19 years old though. And then she's going to have a marriage of convenience with this older guy because she has a very bad home life situation. Like I do recommend looking up a couple of trigger warnings. There's stuff like eating disorders and like just bad home life sort of stuff. And basically she is not doing very well. And she kind of like befriends this older guy because she gets stuck in a few situations. I think her like car breaks down or something. He ends up like driving her home a few times. They become friends of sorts. So there are a handful of like take care of her sort of moments. Like he's always like swooping in to save the day. And basically once he finally figures out like what's going on with her home life, he offers to marry her so that she can be put on his insurance so that she could finally get the help that she needs. So she basically says yes because she really has to get out of her house. So she's going to be able to move in with him. And then it's going to be their romance of sorts. So I really enjoy this book. It is a little bit on the taboo side because of the age gap and everything like that. But if you are down for that, then I highly recommend checking it out because this is one of those books that have like the whole vibe is that he's taking care of her like left and right. He's always just like swooping in to like try to help her out and everything like that. So if you like the take care of her at sick moment sort of situation, then this will be a great choice to decide to read. But anyway, let's move on. Next up, I wanted to share Forbidden by Carla Sorensen, which is another book that I have been mentioning a lot recently in my videos for some reason, but it's okay because I absolutely love it. And if you haven't read it yet, then I highly recommend checking it out. So in this book, you're following this girl who works at a like boxing sort of gym, and it was recently sold to a new owner, and she's going to end up having a relationship with the new owner. So the thing is that this guy is an ex-MMA fighter. So it's got a bit of that sports romance situation with a workplace environment because like it's very sports vibes, but they are in their workplace. And he also happens to be a widow and a single parent. So there's got a lot of good sort of stuff going on in this book. And also it's an age gap. So I absolutely loved this book, and happens to be there is a moment in this book where something happens to her and then he comes in and like saves the day. So I don't want to give it away, but basically you should read this book to find out where the take care of her sick moment situation happens. So yeah, Forbidden by Carla Sorensen. This is the fourth book in a companion series, but you could totally read it like on its own. This is actually the first book that I read in the series. So yeah, just check it out, but also check out the rest of the series because the whole thing is absolutely great. But anyway, after this, I wanted to share with you a book that I honestly don't know if I recommended ever in any of my videos, but basically it's The Predator by Runnix. I hope that I'm saying the author's name right, but either way, this is the first book in a mafia romance, which I feel like I haven't talked about mafia in a very long time on my channel because I kind of like fell out of the vibe for a while there. But either way, when I read this book, I remember there being a take care of her sick moment. It's one of those like, just like mafia, he's very like protective and like, your mind sort of vibes, like very heavy on those sort of tropes. And anyway, something happens to her at one point and he's obviously going to swoop in and just like take control of sorts. And it was a really cute moment. But either way, this is the first book in a series. So you do have to read the second book to get this couple's happily ever after. And then there is book 3, 4, and I think 5 that continues on with the story that you're following, but it's like jumps to a different couple and like different perspectives of sorts. So a little bit confusing, but either way, it's just like a regular mafia romance. They're dealing with some mafia things, and I don't know. I don't even remember like the details about it. I think like, a code got out there that she created, and then, they basically like have to work together to get it back, but they're from like opposite mafia. So it's got like an enemies sort of vibe, but then obviously they're going to fall for each other, and they're not going to care that they're from like different families of sorts, But anyway, it's a solid story. It is in third perspective though. I think it's like dual POV, but third perspective. So it is a little bit of hard time to like wrap your head around it if you're not used to third perspective. But if you can read that sort of vibe, then I recommend checking this book out because it is a pretty solid story, and it does have a take care of her a sick moment situation. So anyway, let's move on. Next up, I wanted to share with you Revelry by Candy Steiner. So this is about this girl who I think she was recently divorced, and she decides to spend the summer in a cabin in middle of nowhere. I forgot where it is, but either way, she's in like a tiny little town now, and she's going to end up having a romance with the guy that kind of lives next door, that is kind of like the out of the society sort of thing. He's like dealing with a couple of stuff from his past, so he kind of like doesn't talk to anyone, but he's going to be intrigued by her, then they're going to end up forming something, and then they're going to have a romance. But either way, the take care of her sick moment actually happens, I think, the first time that they meet. Like something happens, and because he's like right next door, he hears her, and then he runs over and takes care of her. So either way, this one was really cute how the take care of her moment kind of happened. So I recommend checking it out to see for yourself. But either way, pretty solid story. Very like watching these two people kind of like deal with their own things while also like navigating their feelings and a relationship sort of thing. Like it's one of those like character emotional development sort of stories, but either way, it's a pretty solid read. So check it out if you want to. But anyway, lastly, I did want to share with you two books by the same author, but they're from like completely different series, and they're all like, they're standalones, but like from a companion series. So anyway, first up, I have Tattered Stars, and then second up, I have Reckless Refuge. So both of these books are romantic suspense books. Why don't I just do one at a time? In this one, you're following this girl who, when she was a kid, her father had kidnapped someone. So she ends up like taking it into her own hands to go to the police and like tell on her father, and basically she saved the girl. And now it's like years later, and she comes back to this small town where all of this happened, and she's not very welcome, and she's going to end up having a romance with the brother of the girl that she had saved when she was younger. So that's the story. And then in this one, you're following this girl who is running away from someone in her past, and she's living on a remote island, and the island basically gets sold to like this new guy who happens to be like running from something in his past as well. And then it's basically going to be their romance because they're living on this remote island together. And then obviously like the things from their past is going to come back to haunt them like by the end of the book. Like that's the suspense aspect of it. But either way, both of these books do have a take care of her sick moment situation. In this book, there's a very, very particular one that I can remember happens. Like something happens to her, and he like swoops in and like gets all protective and sorts. And like I really enjoyed how it went down in this book. And in this one, I feel like it was more of like in general, he was like taking care of her. Like there are a couple of moments where something specifically happened to her, like that had to do with the suspense aspect, and he just like swooped in and like took charge and everything like that. But I feel like this one is a little heavier on the idea of like he just kept saving her like left and right. She needed help here and there, and he just always kept being like right around the corner to like help her in whatever way she needed. But either way, two books by Catherine Cowles that have this type of trope in it. So I recommend checking them both out if you're into small town romances with a romantic suspense sort of situation. But either way, that is all the books that I wanted to share with you today for the take care of her sick moment trope. So leave me a comment down below if you plan to check out any of the recommendations from today's video, because I'd love to know which ones you chose and which ones like stood out to you that you think you want to read. But either way, with that said, give this video a like if you enjoyed watching it. Subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed. And either way, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And until next time, enjoy reading.